All right, welcome to our latest Colorado Buffaloes opponent preview, and we're joined by Kevin Lytle of the Coloradoans, sorry, in Fort Collins. And Kevin, you've been covering the Rams for a little bit, and know that program pretty well. And we did this last year, so I appreciate you joining me again.
Absolutely happy to be back on. Thanks, Brian.
Well, last year's game was pretty exciting, and I think Buff fans obviously they like that one better than the Ram fans, and Ram fans probably feel like they should have come away with a win there. So this year's game I'm looking forward to because not only rematch but being in Fort Collins, first time since 1996. I actually covered that 1996 game the last time I was in Fort Collins. So just your initial thoughts on this matchup and I guess the rematch this year.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, very exciting. People in Fort Collins are obviously excited to have that game back. It's been so long. I mean, 1996, how many generations of students does that mean? Lots and lots that, never got to, have a home Rocky Mountain Showdown in Fort Collins. There's a lot of people obviously very excited, just generally, when this contract, was signed of, kind of circling this date. And then you throw in everything that happened last year and, that excitement level has just really ratcheted up. CSU, as you can imagine, is kind of using that as a big season ticket selling point. A lot, get renewals, to make sure you get the CU game type of thing. So yeah, excitement level is very, very high. And, the game itself, obviously last year, that was, one of the best games probably in college football
Yeah.
across the country. Obviously the viewership numbers reflected that as well. So it's been, until last year, a long time since this game had national attention, and given everything that happened last year, I think the nation of college football fans are going to be pretty dialed in. I mean, Michael Vick has been tweeting about this game nonstop, it seems like. So
Yeah.
people are paying attention. So I think that's both good for the state overall, and just exciting for everyone that loves these two programs.
So before I ask you, more in-depth stuff about the Rams, how much do you think they're going to be fueled by what happened last year? Not only that they probably felt they should have won that game or could have won that game, but some of the off the field stuff, and even since the Prime documentary came out in December, where you saw a little glimpse of the Norvell and Dion, handshake at the end, or I don't know if they shook hands or not. I can't remember, but that when they came together at the end, and there was a little back and forth even on social media. Norvell's wife, kind of went at Shador a little bit. How much do you think the Rams are fueled by that stuff?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, it'd be naive to think that it's not playing a part in their heads, and they're not aware of all that and motivated by all that. Probably feel like you say the game itself probably feel like that's one they should have had, and then you throw in all the off field stuff that I think there's no doubt. And there are a lot of CSU's key players. I'm sure we'll get into them a bit, but a lot of them were in that game, so there's pretty good familiarity, if you will, for between the groups of, there's a ton of new players. It's college football. That's what happens. But a lot of the key players in all that, kind of drama, if you will, are back. So yeah, I think there's no doubt that, the CSU leadership, the main guys that were part of that game last year, feel like, maybe, they owe one, and want to make sure to take care of that, especially at home.
Yeah, I want to ask you one other thing, off the field thing before we move on. But one of the things that happened last year was the Henry Blackburn hit on Travis Hunter. Where call it a cheap shot, late hit, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter with what I'm going to ask you here. The point is, CU fans were ready to spit venom, and I thought that Travis Hunter and Henry did a great job. If they came together, they did a video and said, "Hey, it's just football, man," and they went bowling together, things like that. I know a lot of Buff fans, at least the ones I saw and talked to, were like, okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Like, cool on Travis. How did Ram fans feel about Travis Hunter when you see something like that?
Yep. I think that's pretty similar feel. I mean, obviously, like you say, forget what happened on the field. What happened after was, way beyond the bounds of, what, acceptable banter is. I forget what the police said, the mad death threats that Blackburn and his family got, but it's an insane number. And then for those two to basically be the adults in the room, which, they're obviously technically adults. They're pretty young guys. They could have, been pretty volatile about it as well, especially, Travis Hunter getting hurt, but they handled it really well. I think a lot of CSU fans, that I've talked to, personally and seen on social media, especially when that video came out, kind of, did the, sort of applause, if you will, of like, hey, kudos Travis Hunter for being mature about this, and instead of pouring gasoline on the fire, he kind of hit with the fire extinguisher to calm things down. I think a lot of CSU fans kind of gained a lot of respect for how he handled that in a
Mhm.
very, very tricky situation in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see, all those off the field things as that game comes up here in week 3,
Yeah.
in September. But let's talk about the Rams, because this is a team that obviously, they're still trying to get back to their winning ways. 6 straight losing seasons, which is unusual at CSU, because of what previous coaches had done. I mean, it wasn't always fantastic seasons, but the Rams were in bowl games. Now it's 6 straight losing seasons, but there are a lot of key players back, as you said. Let's start offensively. I mean, Braden Fowler Nicolosi is back, second year as a starting quarterback. Torrey Horton's back. You've got some good players back. How do you feel about that offense?
Yeah, Braden Fowler Nicolosi, we'll start with him. That CU game was his first career start. He had come in the previous week in place of Clay Millen, and then CSU had had a bye, and he basically won the job, if you will, and never let go. And kind of that CU game is what you saw from BFN, as fans call him, all year. He had some down points. Obviously, that pick six to Shiloh was one of those, but then some really huge plays, and he had some massive plays in that game. And kind of the swagger that you saw in that game, I think a lot of people, myself included, wondered like, okay, young kid. I guess it technically wasn't his first start because he had started one the year before, but first start last season. How's he going to
Yeah.
handle this atmosphere? And especially after a pick six, I think he responded really well. So super talented, big arm. I wouldn't say a runner, but a guy that is mobile in the pocket to keep plays alive, that type of thing,
Mhm.
and big playability. So, yeah, his big thing is he had a lot of interceptions last year, 16 of them. Need to cut down that number, but he is a gunslinger. He's going to try and fit
Yeah.
balls in holes that may or may not exist or may not be big enough to fit. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how he's grown, this summer and, through spring ball, fall camp, all that type of stuff. And then, yeah, Torrey Horton, is, not only the best player on the team, but pretty decent argument that he's the best offensive player in the Mountain West. There are a few other guys that would, have a say in that, of course, but Torrey's a really talented receiver. He could have
Mhm.
been an NFL draft pick, in April, decided to come back. He wanted to add some weight, refine some of his game to try and improve his draft stock. He's young for his age. He's just 21, even though this will be his 5th year. So he kind of has the age working for him. Just supremely talented. Again, CU fans obviously saw a decent bit of that in that game. He had some pretty big plays. He will be the focal point of the offense. Everyone's going to know that.
Mhm.
How will teams stop that? And conversely, how will other guys step up when Torrey Horton is getting all that attention from defenses? But everything offensively starts with those two guys, no doubt.
Yeah, and one thing about Braden is that his interception numbers did go down in the second half of the season, and through most
Yep.
of them early in the season. I don't know how much of that is the experience. We'll find out this year. But what about around them? I know that they lost some key receivers to the transfer portal, picked up some receivers for the transfer portal. But what do you feel like they have around them? They didn't run the ball very well last year. Do you think they're better in that regard?
Yeah, so at receiver, yeah, lost a couple talented guys. Justice Ross Simmons to Syracuse. Lewis Brown, who scored a touchdown against CU, is off to San Diego State. But they've had some guys from power conferences. Armani Winfield from Baylor, Donovan Ollie from Cincinnati, and he was previously at Washington State. Actually scored a couple touchdowns against Norvell and Colorado State a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, which is kind of funny. So they have some talented guys there, a San Jose State transfer, and then they have a lot of young guys that they're really excited about. So they probably need a combo of one or two of those transfers and one or two of the young guys like a Caleb Goody, Jamari Person to step up. But this staff has pretty long history in developing receivers. So I'm not exactly sure who, but you kind of bank on their history that someone will step forward. And then as far as the running game, it should be a lot better than last year. A kid, Justin Marshall, didn't play until the final 3 games and then really
Yeah.
burst on the scene as a true freshman. He was really dynamic. I think he will probably be the number one guy coming out of camp, assuming
Mhm.
health and availability and all that stuff. But they have a lot of experience. Kobe Johnson had more than 2,500 yards at North Dakota State. He ended up redshirting, medical redshirt last year after I think it was like a wrist injury. He's back. Avery Morrow has a lot of carries. He's back. They have a couple other young guys like a Damian Henderson. So they should have a really deep room, and those guys are kind of all different in what they do. So they should have some versatility there. And that's an O line that's, for the most part, pretty experienced. So I think they're feeling confident that they'll be able to run it better. And Jay Norvell's definitely talked a lot about wanting to control games a little better, because last year the offense was very roller coaster. It would
Right.
be very dynamic, or it would be, quick 3 and out or a quick turnover. So they, sometimes, 2 or 3 first downs and then a punt isn't the worst thing, because at least you control the ball, give your defense a chance to rest, that type of thing. They need to be a little bit more even keel. I think that run game will be part of that.
Yeah, and then I was switching over to defense. Obviously, you lose, the defensive player of the year in the Mountain West, Mo
Yeah.
Kamara, who we saw just harassed Shedeur Sanders throughout that night until the targeting ejection late in the game. That
Yep.
CSU fans, you can debate that all you want, whatever. Great player. That's my point. Is that great player?
Yep.
He's now in the NFL. They weren't great on defense last year, although he was great. It looks to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but looks to me like this year's defense is kind of led by those veteran safeties in the back, Jack Howell and Henry Blackburn, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Those guys are both your on and off field leaders in a lot of ways. They've played just a ton of games. It feels like, they both played very early in their careers. And so they're
Mhm.
those guys that feel like it's like, whoa, they're still playing. Like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how do they keep getting eligibility? So they have a ton of experience, and they're definitely going to lean on them. I think you were right there. Mo Camara was a great player, had a great season, but overall the defense wasn't very good. They gave up far too many big plays.
Mhm.
I think there are 3 different games, including the CU game, that came down to actually 4 that came down to the final possession. And CSU went 1-3 in those, with, some pretty big offensive plays against CSU, obviously including that 98-yard drive to send that one to overtime in Boulder.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing, just big gash plays allowed. That, there were times the defense was good, but too volatile. That's kind of the story of that team last year. Is their good moments were good, but the bad moments were bad, and it really kept CSU from being in a bowl. And that defense definitely, again, need to be more consistent. It's an air raid offense, which can put strain on the defense,
Mhm.
especially if it's turning over like it did last year. But still, you can't have those huge gash plays, especially at the most important times. So that's the biggest focus for a defense, is just calming that down a bit.
Yeah, and always good to have a couple of veteran safeties, but you
Yep.
got to have that front seven. And Kamara is a huge one to replace. I mean,
Yep.
who rushes the passer? I mean, who's going to get the sacks, and can they stop the run?
Yeah, Mo had, I think, his 13 sacks last year. It's turns into one of those money ball lines. Like, you have to recreate in the aggregate. There's not going to be
Right.
one guy that comes in as 13 sacks. Probably first up in that list is Newer Gatkuth. He played a lot last year. Young guy, really, long, athletic. Kai has that, pass rushing pro type.
Mhm.
He's going to get a lot of those chances where they try and line him up against, the weakest offensive linemen, get after the quarterback. So he's one. Mukinde Wakalanje, a Colorado kid from Grandview. He's had some big plays in his career, but not a ton of super notable consistent success. He's in
Yeah.
there. They have some veteran guys in the middle, Cam Baratow, James Mitchell, but they have a lot of young guys they're relying on. So they're gonna need some guys that, again, they have physical tools that you see, but haven't had a lot of game experience, partially because
Yeah.
Mo Camaro was in front of them.
Right.
But they'll need them to step up.
Yeah, so defensively, we're going to see, if they're good enough, to stop some of those teams, and special teams wise, kicker and punter both back, they're both pretty good, so they should be in
Yep.
great shape there.
Yeah, special teams, I think they're really confident in. Jordan Noyes was really solid last year. He had a couple really notable field goals, and he had a 55-yarder against UNLV in the final minute to put CSU in the lead. Should have won them the game. Again, the defense gave up the lead there. Patty Turner, a punter, he's one of these Aussie rules kind of style guys that
Yeah.
does funky things. He's left-footed, but he really controls the ball, limits returns. So they really like him. And then Torrey Horton returns punts, and he's so good at punt returning that I'm going to guess we're not going to see him return many punts, because teams would be foolish to kick it to him. So yeah,
Yeah.
special teams should be a strong point for this team. Kobe Johnson returned a kick for a touchdown last year before he got hurt. So yeah, top to bottom, really, special teams should be one of CSU's strongest points.
So overall with this team, I mean, obviously, we're talking. I'm talking to you because they're playing Colorado, and so Colorado fans are focused on that game. But this program
Yep.
in general, we mentioned 6 straight losing seasons. This is Norvell's third season now. It's not only the bowl games, but they haven't beaten CU in a minute. They've struggled against Air Force, for a few years now. And so, what are the priorities? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
is it bowl game one? Is it conference one? Is it the rivalries? Like, what are the priorities, or is it really get all that stuff?
Yeah, it probably depends on who you talk to.
Yeah,
Especially given how, the CU game being early and everything that went with that. Most people, fans right now would probably say beat Colorado. That's number
yeah,
one priority. But overall, like you say, year three, especially in the transfer portal era, year three, you kind of need to start winning.
yeah,
Jay Norvell obviously brought in a lot of his guys from Nevada. Uh, for the Mountain West, CSU has pretty high investment, compared to
yeah.
other teams in the league. You have to start winning. I think there's a team that needs to be in the postseason. CSU has 7 home games this year for the first
Hmm.
time ever. And they also, this is crazy, 7 of CSU's opponents, the head coach will be in their first year at that
Wow.
program as well. So you
Hmm.
combine those two things and, you have to be in a bowl. So yeah, I think that rivalries, like you say, CU, Air Force, Wyoming, CSU, dating back, through the end of the Mike Boba era, wasn't beating those teams' only rivalry win in the last like 5 years is Steve Adazio against Wyoming in an empty
Yeah,
stadium that, frankly, few people really even remember because of that. So yeah, that CSU needs to win some rivalry games and needs to make a bowl. Those are 2 ones. I would say, there are 3 rivalry games technically: Colorado, Wyoming, and Air Force. I think, Jay Norvell and staff, to feel, really comfortable and to please
hmm,
people, need to be playing in the postseason and win 2 of those rivals probably.
yeah. And they'd probably take the postseason if even if there weren't the rivalry matches, I assume. But I do think,
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I look at this team. This is a bowl team. I don't know what happens in Fort
Yep.
Collins when the Buffs go up there. I personally would pick the Buffs, but I still think this is a good Rams team that should be in a bowl game. And I don't know if they contend for the Mountain West, but to me, this is a team that should be playing in December.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, barring obviously kind of the always asterisk of crazy injuries,
Hmm.
barring that, this team, yeah, needs to be playing in December in a bowl game. And
Hmm.
again, when you have that many 7 home games, you don't even need to win once on the road to get
Right.
to a bowl. So take care of business at home and see what you can do on the road. And that's kind of the formula right now.
Yeah, and they should have enough talent to win on the road a time or two as well. So it's
Yeah.
gonna be interesting to see the CSU team. I think that they've finally. I like the trajectory of them. I think that Norvell's got it going, but I think this is a big year, like you mentioned.
Yep.
You don't want to wait too long in the transfer portal area. You don't want to go into 4 and 5 years 4 and 5 and say we still haven't been to that bowl game. And so I think this is a big year for them, but it'll be a fun year.